John Michael Osbourne was born on December 3, 1948, in Aston, a working-class district of Birmingham, England. The Osbournes lived in a cramped two-bedroom home, with their 6 children. His father, Jack, worked night shifts at a car horn factory, and his mother, Lillian, juggled jobs to keep food on the table. For him, school was a torment. His dyslexia and undiagnosed learning difficulties made academics nearly impossible. But he had a natural charisma. He loved making people laugh, performing impressions, and earning the nickname Ozzy. Music entered his life as salvation. When he first heard the Beatles' She Loves You in 1963, he knew he wanted to be in a band. Before making it in the music business, he worked many odd jobs. He was a slaughterhouse worker, a plumber's apprentice, a horn tuner, and he also drifted into trouble. Ozzy's future seemed destined for factories and poverty, but fate had something much greater in store for him. Geezer Butler and Ozzy Osbourne met after joining a short-lived outfit named Rare Breed. In late 1968, fate brought them back together. Butler had been playing in a heavy blues group called Polka Tulk Blues Band, along with guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward. After a few lineup changes, Ozzy was invited to join as the lead singer. They first played as Earth, a bluesy rock band. Their sound was raw, inspired by acts like Cream and Jimi Hendrix. But something was missing. A turning point came when they noticed long lines of people outside a local cinema waiting to see horror movies. The band wondered, what if music could create that same sense of fear and excitement? In August 1969, they changed their name to Black Sabbath, borrowing it from a 1963 Boris Karloff horror film. With the new identity came a darker and heavier sound. Tony Iommi's unique guitar style, shaped by an industrial accident that cost him 2 fingertips, gave their music a sinister edge. Geezer Butler, a fan of occult literature, filled the songs with apocalyptic visions that matched perfectly with Ozzy's haunting voice. By late 1969, the band was performing original material, blending their blues roots with crushing riffs and ominous doom-laden themes. The result was a sound that felt dangerous, electrifying, and unlike anything heard before. Their debut single, Evil Woman, offered a glimpse of this new direction, but it was their self-titled album, released in early 1970, that truly announced their arrival, igniting a new genre that would change rock music forever. Their debut album, simply titled Black Sabbath, landed like thunder. It was recorded on October 16, 1969, at Regent Sound Studios in London during a single 12-hour session, and it was mixed the following day. The album was released fittingly on Friday the 13th of February 1970. The lineup was Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Tony Iommi on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, and Bill Ward on drums, with Roger Bain producing and Tom Allom engineering. The record was steeped in eerie lyrics and heavy riffs, its title track opening with the tolling of church bells and a down-tuned riff that chilled audiences to the bone. Critics sneered, calling it crude and noisy, but fans embraced it instantly. The album reached number 8 on the UK charts and number 23 on the Billboard 200 in the US, selling over 1 million copies worldwide. Songs like The Wizard and NIB became early fan favorites, while the ominous title track set the template for heavy metal. In June 1970, only a few months after their groundbreaking debut, Black Sabbath recorded their second album, Paranoid, at Regent Sound and Island Studios in London, with the same lineup and production team. Released in September of that year, the record became their breakthrough, launching Black Sabbath into the stratosphere. The title track, Paranoid, was written quickly as filler and became their most famous song, reaching number 4 in the UK singles chart. Alongside it were the anthems Iron Man and War Pigs, both of which became generational rallying cries. Paranoid topped the UK charts and reached number 12 in the US, eventually selling more than 4 million copies in the States alone, and millions more worldwide. Its combination of dark themes, sludgy riffs, and anthemic choruses would define the blueprint for metal bands for decades to come. The early 70s brought a string of classics that solidified their legacy. In 1971 came Master of Reality, recorded at Island Studios in London with Bain again producing. It introduced Iommi's experimentation with down-tuned guitars, partly due to his finger injury, creating an even heavier sound. Tracks like Sweet Leaf, Children of the Grave, and Into the Void became instant classics. Though critics again panned it, fans pushed the record to platinum status in the US, where it sold over 2 million copies. In the UK, it reached number 5 on the charts, proving the band's growing dominance. In 1972, the band released Volume 4, recorded in Los Angeles at the record plant. This was the first album produced by the band themselves, with engineer Colin Caldwell and assistance from Patrick Meehan. Its sessions were marked by the band's deepening cocaine use, and the record bore the scars and energy of that lifestyle. Songs like Supernaut, Changes, and Snowblind showed both their musical range and their descent into excess. Despite the chaos, Volume 4 climbed to number 13 on the US Billboard 200 and number 8 in the UK. It was certified gold within months and later went platinum in the US, selling over 1 million copies. By 1973, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath pushed the band into even more ambitious territory. Recorded at Morgan Studios in London, the album was produced by the band with engineer Mike Butcher. For the first time, they incorporated orchestration, synthesizers, and more complex arrangements. The title track became an enduring classic, and other standouts included A National Acrobat and Spiral Architect. Critics, who had previously dismissed them, now began to acknowledge their creativity. Rolling Stone praised the record, marking a rare critical breakthrough for the group. Commercially, it soared. It reached number 4 in the UK, number 11 in the US, and went gold in both markets, selling over 1 million copies worldwide. Then, in 1975 came Sabotage, recorded again at Morgan Studios amid legal battles with their former management. The record's turbulent background seeped into its raw, aggressive energy. Songs like Hole in the Sky, Symptom of the Universe, and Megalomania showcased both their heaviness and their experimental edge. Though not as commercially dominant as Paranoid, the album reached number 7 in the UK and number 28 in the US, and it went gold in America, proving the band's staying power. Fans and musicians alike would later hail it as one of their most underrated masterpieces. By now, Black Sabbath had become one of the most important rock bands in the world, selling millions of albums, packing arenas, and inspiring countless young musicians who would later form their own heavy metal bands. Behind the scenes, chaos was mounting. Success brought wealth, and with it came a constant supply of drugs and alcohol. Ozzy plunged into substance abuse, becoming increasingly unpredictable. His stage performances were brilliant on some nights and nearly dysfunctional on others. The rest of the band wrestled with their own addictions, and the growing dependency began to erode both their creativity and their relationships. Recording sessions in Los Angeles and London often spiraled out of control. What began as music making frequently turned into days-long binges with little sleep, leaving the band exhausted and fraying under the pressure. Amid this turmoil, Tony Iommi, the band's guitarist and unofficial leader, clashed with Ozzy over the group's direction. Iommi pushed for more complexity and experimentation, while Ozzy championed the raw, heavy riffs that had made Sabbath legendary. This creative tug-of-war bred resentment, with Ozzy increasingly feeling sidelined in the songwriting process. Despite all the madness, Ozzy tried to balance a personal life. In 1971, at just 22 years old, he married his childhood sweetheart, Thelma Riley, whom he had met at the Rum Runner nightclub in Birmingham. Their whirlwind romance quickly became a marriage, and Ozzy became stepfather to Thelma's son, Elliot, from a previous relationship. Together, They also had 2 children of their own, daughter Jessica, born in 1972, and son Louis, born in 1975. But being a husband and father did little to calm Ozzy's lifestyle. Constant touring meant he was rarely home. He later admitted that he was a terrible husband and father during this time, consumed by fame and addiction. By 1976, the cracks within Black Sabbath were beginning to show, but the band pressed on with their 7th studio album, Technical Ecstasy. Recorded at Criteria Studios in Miami, Florida, and produced by Tony Iommi, the sessions were plagued by tension, fatigue, and growing substance abuse. Engineers Mike Butcher and Robin Black worked on the project, while Ozzy, Iommi, Butler, and Ward were still the core lineup. The album showcased a more experimental sound, with keyboards and synthesizers more prominent than before. Songs like Backstreet Kids, Rock and Roll Doctor, and Dirty Women showed the band moving in new directions, while Bill Ward even sang lead vocals on It's All Right. The record reached number 51 on the US Billboard and number 13 in the UK. While it eventually went gold in the US, it was seen by many fans as a departure from their heavy roots. Sales slowed compared to earlier triumphs, but Technical Ecstasy demonstrated Sabbath's willingness to adapt, even if audiences were divided. By 1978, Inner Turmoil was reaching a breaking point, but the band delivered one last album with Ozzy at the helm, Never Say Die. Recorded at Sounds Interchange Studios in Toronto, Canada, with Tony Iommi again producing and Mike Butcher engineering, the record was born in chaos. Ozzy temporarily quit during the sessions, frustrated with the new material, and was briefly replaced by Dave Walker of Fleetwood Mac before returning. The lineup remained intact with Osbourne, Iommi, Butler, and Ward. But the tensions were palpable. Musically, the album mixed hard rock with jazz and experimental touches, as heard on tracks like Never Say Die, Junior's Eyes, and Hard Road. Released in September 1978, it reached number 12 in the UK and number 69 in the US, and it went gold in America. Although commercially successful, critics were lukewarm, and fans sensed the band had lost some of its dark magic. Still, both Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die kept Sabbath in the spotlight, and the title track of the latter even gave the band a top 40 UK single. They continued touring to large audiences, including a high-profile 1978 US tour with Van Halen as the opening act. On the 27th of April 1979, the inevitable happened. Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath. His bandmates felt he had become a liability, too far gone to contribute meaningfully. For Ozzy, it was devastating. He sank into substance abuse and depression, isolating himself for 3 months at Le Parc Hotel in Los Angeles, convinced his career had come to an end. Looking back, Ozzy himself admitted he was out of control. He was the first to admit that he was acting like a lunatic. But at the time, all Ozzy felt was betrayal from his band, from his friends, and from himself. Just when Ozzy seemed lost, salvation arrived in the form of Sharon Arden, the daughter of music manager Don Arden. Sharon believed in Ozzy when no one else did. She pulled him from his haze and pushed him to form a new band. Her determination to resurrect his career would become one of the most important and powerful partnerships in rock history. Ozzy's dismissal from Black Sabbath had left him depressed and nearly broken beyond repair. But Sharon, who had already known Ozzy through her father's management of Black Sabbath, refused to let him sink. She recognized his charisma, his unique voice, and his magnetic star power. Sharon not only became his manager, but also his guiding force, instilling discipline and rebuilding his confidence piece by piece. All of Sharon and Ozzy Osbourne's hard work came together in his debut solo album, Blizzard of Ozz. Recorded at Ridge Farm Studios in Rusper, Surrey, with Max Norman behind the console as sound engineer, the album marked a bold new chapter in his career. It first hit shelves in the UK on September 20th, 1980, and later reached American audiences on March 27th, 1981. The lineup was Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Randy Rhoads on guitar, Bob Daisley on bass, Lee Kerslake on drums, and Don Airey contributing keyboards. From the opening riffs of I Don't Know, the album stunned the rock world. The song Crazy Train, powered by Rhoads' unforgettable guitar riff, became an instant anthem and remains one of the most iconic songs in heavy metal history. Mr. Crowley, featuring Rhoads' haunting neoclassical solos, cemented him as a guitar prodigy and showcased Ozzy's fascination with the occult. Other standouts included the song Suicide Solution and the ballad Goodbye to Romance, which revealed a more melodic side of Ozzy. Commercially, the album was an undeniable success. It peaked at number 7 on the UK Albums Chart and number 21 on the US Billboard 200. It went on to sell over 5 million copies in the US alone, achieving quintuple platinum certification, and sold millions more worldwide. For an artist many had written off after his dismissal from Black Sabbath, the record was proof that Ozzy was far from finished. What made Blizzard of Ozz remarkable was not only its commercial triumph, but also Ozzy's artistic reinvention. Where Black Sabbath had been heavy and doom-laden, Blizzard of Ozz was sharp, melodic, and adventurous, and fans worldwide hailed it as the dawn of a new era. Ozzy had not only survived his exit from Black Sabbath, but he had reinvented himself as the unlikely leader of a fresh wave of heavy metal that would dominate the 1980s. Ozzy Osbourne followed with Diary of a Madman, released on November 7, 1981. It was another powerful triumph that cemented his place as a solo force in heavy metal. The album was recorded at Ridge Farm Studios in Rusper, Surrey, England, with Max Norman once again handling engineering and co-production. The core lineup featured Ozzy on vocals, Randy Rhoads on guitar, Bob Daisley on bass, and Lee Kerslake on drums. But Daisley and Kerslake were controversially replaced in the album credits by bassist Rudy Sarzo and drummer Tommy Aldridge, who joined the touring band after recording was completed. Musically, Diary of a Madman was darker, more ambitious, and more experimental than Blizzard of Ozz. Songs like Over the Mountain showcased Rhoads' dazzling speed and precision, while Flying High Again became a fan-favorite anthem. The haunting title track, Diary of a Madman, with its orchestral arrangements and gothic atmosphere, revealed a new sophistication in Ozzy's music, fusing heavy metal with dramatic, almost cinematic flourishes. Tracks such as Believer and Tonight further displayed the band's range, balancing crushing riffs with melody and atmosphere. Commercially, the album was a massive success. It climbed to number 14 on the US Billboard 200 and number 41 on the UK Albums Chart. In America, it went on to sell over 3 million copies, earning triple platinum status, while also performing strongly worldwide. The singles Flying High Again and Over the Mountain both received heavy radio airplay, helping to expand Ozzy's reach beyond metal audiences. The impact of the record was equally cultural. Diary of a Madman firmly cemented Randy Rhoads as one of the greatest guitarists of his generation, blending classical influences with fiery metal playing in a way no one else had done before. For Ozzy, it proved beyond doubt that his success was no fluke. He was no longer living in Black Sabbath's shadow. He was Ozzy Osbourne, the solo superstar. This period was marked by Ozzy's notorious stage antics, which managed to both shock and captivate the press. In 1981, during a record company meeting, he bit the head off a dove, a stunt that made headlines around the world. In January 1982, during a concert in Des Moines, Iowa, a fan threw a bat onto the stage. Thinking it was a rubber toy, Ozzy picked it up and bit off its head. The bat was real, and Ozzy was rushed to the hospital for rabies shots. The shocking incident quickly made international headlines. The stunt horrified parents, outraged the press, and immortalized him forever as the Prince of Darkness. Another infamous incident that captured headlines took place on February 19, 1982, in San Antonio, Texas. A drunken Ozzy, wearing Sharon's dress, urinated on a cenotaph honoring those who died at the Alamo. The act was seen as unforgivable, earning him a 10-year ban from performing in the city. The ban was eventually lifted in 1992, when Ozzy publicly apologized. Then, tragedy struck. On the 19th of March 1982, Randy Rhoads perished in a plane crash at the age of 25. The shocking accident occurred while on tour in Florida, when a small plane carrying Rhoads and two others clipped the band's tour bus and crashed into a nearby house. Ozzy was devastated. He had lost not only his guitarist, but also one of the most important people in his life at a moment when he needed him most. The loss shattered Ozzy emotionally. He fell deeper into substance abuse, haunted by grief. In interviews years later, Ozzy admitted he never fully recovered from Randy's death. Yet, even in the depths of despair, he carried on. He performed live shows in Rhoads' honor, refusing to let his memory fade. Guitarist Brad Gillis of Night Ranger was hired to carry the tour through to its end. In July of 1982, Ozzy and Sharon tied the knot. Though marked by ups and downs, their relationship grew into one of the most powerful partnerships in music. Sharon was more than Ozzy's wife. She was his manager, his planner, and his protector. While Ozzy stumbled through scandal after scandal, she worked behind the scenes to keep his career alive. She negotiated contracts, handled lawsuits, and orchestrated his public image, transforming him into not just a heavy metal legend, but a household name. Sharon was also Ozzy's anchor. When his drinking spiraled, she dragged him back. When promoters doubted him, she demanded respect. Their love story became part of Ozzy's mythology, a relationship defined by loyalty and an unbreakable bond forged in love and chaos. By 1982, Ozzy Osbourne had already proven himself as a solo force with the albums Blizzard of Ozz and Diary of a Madman. But in the aftermath of Randy Rhoads' tragedy, his management sought a way to keep momentum going while the band regrouped. The result was Speak of the Devil, a live album captured in September 1982 at the Ritz in New York City, and released on November 22nd later that year. Speak of the Devil was not filled with new material. Instead, it was a collection of Black Sabbath classics, reimagined and performed by Ozzy's solo band. The production and studio work were once again overseen by Max Norman. The lineup featured Ozzy on vocals, Brad Gillis on guitar, Rudy Sarzo on bass, and Tommy Aldridge on drums. Gillis, who had only recently joined the group, delivered a fiery but distinctly different interpretation of Iommi's legendary riffs. The setlist included Sabbath staples such as Iron Man, Paranoid, Children of the Grave, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and War Pigs. While purists often criticize the album for not capturing the spirit of the originals, it gave fans a chance to hear Ozzy reclaim his Sabbath legacy on stage. For Ozzy, it also served as a way to reassert his ownership of the songs that had launched his career, while distancing himself from the band he had been fired from only a few years earlier. Commercially, Speak of the Devil was a success. The album climbed to number 14 on the US Billboard 200 and earned gold certification, ultimately selling more than 500,000 copies in America and several 100,000 more across the globe. In the UK, it reached number 21 on the albums chart. The record also fueled controversy. Its gruesome cover, featuring Ozzy in blood and fangs, played into his Prince of Darkness image at a time when his stage antics were under constant scrutiny. While Speak of the Devil is sometimes viewed as a stopgap release, it occupies an important place in Ozzy's discography. It bridged the painful loss of Randy Rhoads with the beginning of a new chapter that would soon bring guitarist Jake E. Lee into the fold and lead to Ozzy's next studio triumph, Bark at the Moon. The 1980s cemented Ozzy's reputation as both a rock god and a tabloid figure. After the tragedy of losing Randy Rhoads, many assumed Ozzy's career would crumble. But he proved them wrong. With Sharon now firmly by his side, he entered the most outrageous decade of his life, one where his music, his antics, and his scandals intertwined to create the myth of the Prince of Darkness. In November 1983, Ozzy returned with Bark at the Moon, his first album without Randy Rhoads. The recording took place once again at Ridge Farm Studios in Surrey, England, during the months of August and September 1983. Guiding the sessions was legendary producer Max Norman, who had already become a trusted figure in Ozzy's solo career. This was a crucial moment for Ozzy, and it was his chance to prove he could survive the devastating loss of Randy Rhoads and still deliver. Stepping into Randy's enormous shoes was Jake E. Lee, a fiery guitarist who brought his own distinct style of playing. The rest of the lineup included Bob Daisley on bass, Tommy Aldridge on drums, and Don Airey on keyboards. Together they crafted a record that mixed both dark and theatrical themes, with a polished and radio-ready heavy metal sound. The title track, Bark at the Moon, became an instant MTV staple. In the video, Ozzy famously transforms into a werewolf, cementing his full embrace of the horror-inspired Prince of Darkness image. It was campy, over the top, and perfectly in tune with the 1980s theatrical excess. Although Randy's loss still haunted him, Bark at the Moon proved Ozzy could carry on. The album went multi-platinum in the United States, selling more than 3 million copies worldwide. The songs Bark at the Moon and the ballad So Tired kept Ozzy in heavy rotation on both radio and television, ensuring he remained in the spotlight. Even as younger glam metal acts such as Mötley Crüe and Quiet Riot stormed the charts. In the midst of Ozzy's turbulent career, family life took on new importance during the 1980s. He and Sharon welcomed 3 children: daughter Amy in 1983, Kelly in 1984, and their son Jack in 1985. The Osbourne household was anything but ordinary, shaped by Ozzy's wild reputation and Sharon's determined efforts to keep order. While Amy preferred to avoid the spotlight, Kelly and Jack would later step into public life, most famously through the family's reality television series, The Osbournes. For Ozzy, his children gave him stability and responsibility, anchoring him during the chaos of his career and personal struggles. In 1986, glam metal was dominating MTV, and Ozzy proved he could adapt without losing his edge. That year he released The Ultimate Sin, recorded at Townhouse Studios in London with producer Ron Nevison. The lineup featured Jake E. Lee on guitar, Phil Soussan on bass, Randy Castillo on drums, and Mike Moran on keyboards. Together they created one of the most polished and radio-friendly albums of Ozzy's career. The record produced hits like the title song The Ultimate Sin and Shot in the Dark, which quickly became one of his most recognizable anthems of the decade, and reached the top 20 on the US rock charts. The album itself was certified double platinum in the United States, cementing Ozzy's status as a major force in the mid-80s metal scene. The supporting tour amplified the spectacle. Ozzy performed in outrageous costumes, surrounded by elaborate stage sets and pyrotechnics, placing him shoulder to shoulder with the biggest acts of the era. His larger-than-life image thrived in the MTV era. Music videos were now essential, and Ozzy embraced the medium with great pleasure. The videos released for the Ultimate Sin album were overflowed with fantasy, dark humor, and horror. This mix of menace and fun appealed to hardcore metal fans while also drawing in curious MTV viewers. Ozzy's image was more than dark. It was larger than life, almost like a cartoon. That mix made him scary to some, but oddly fascinating to many young fans. In March 1987, 5 years after the loss of Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne released Randy Rhoads Tribute, a live album created to honor the brilliance and memory of his late guitarist and friend. Rather than a studio record, the release was a live double album, intended as a permanent memorial to Ozzy's closest musical partner. Most of the tracks came from the 1981 Diary of a Madman tour, recorded at venues including Cleveland Music Hall and Montreal's St. Denis Theatre, while a handful dated back to the Blizzard of Ozz era. The musicians captured on these performances were Ozzy on vocals, Rhoads on guitar, Rudy Sarzo on bass, and Tommy Aldridge on drums. What listeners heard was the raw intensity of Ozzy and Randy on stage together. Among the highlights was D, a tender acoustic piece Rhoads had written for his mother and recorded at Ridge Farm Studios in 1980. Its inclusion gave the album an intimate, almost heartbreaking dimension. Tribute struck a chord with audiences worldwide. In the United States, it climbed to number 6 on the Billboard 200 and was certified platinum. For Ozzy, the project was intensely personal, allowing him to share Randy's brilliance with future generations. Many decades later, Randy Rhoads' tribute is still regarded as one of the defining live metal albums of the 1980s. In 1988, Ozzy once again reinvented his sound with the release of No Rest for the Wicked. The album was recorded at Enterprise Studios in Burbank, California, with Roy Thomas Baker initially hired as producer, before Keith Olsen stepped in to complete the project. This time, Ozzy unveiled a brand new guitarist to the world, Zakk Wylde, a 21-year-old prodigy whose Southern blues-inspired style fused effortlessly with heavy metal power. Wylde's raw energy and signature pinch harmonics revitalized Ozzy's music and began one of the longest and most enduring collaborations of his career. The lineup for the recording also featured Bob Daisley on bass, Randy Castillo on drums, and John Sinclair on keyboards. Songs like Miracle Man, a biting satire aimed at televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, and Crazy Babies, with its unhinged energy, showcased Ozzy's sharp sense of humor and willingness to provoke. Ballads like Fire in the Sky added depth, while Zakk Wylde's fiery solos earned him a reputation as the next great guitar hero. The album was another commercial triumph, certified double platinum in the United States and selling millions worldwide. No Rest for the Wicked reaffirmed Ozzy's dominance in the metal world as the 1980s drew to a close, proving that even with new musicians, his throne as the Prince of Darkness remained unshaken. The 1990s brought a major shift in the landscape of rock and metal. Grunge exploded out of Seattle, alternative bands dominated the radio, while nu metal acts began rising by the mid-decade. Many of the heavyweights from the 1970s found themselves outdated or relegated to nostalgia tours. But Ozzy Osbourne was not one of them. Instead of fading into the background, he adapted to the new decade with determination and creativity. He not only survived, he thrived, solidifying his place as a bridge between generations of heavy music. By the early 1990s, many believed Ozzy Osbourne had already peaked, but in 1991, he silenced the doubters with No More Tears, a record that became one of the defining albums of his solo career. It was recorded in Los Angeles during the spring and summer of 1991. Producer Dwayne Barron guided the sessions, while John Purdell handled the mixing, shaping the album into a polished production with crushing heaviness. The lineup was one of Ozzy's strongest. Zakk Wylde delivered thunderous guitar riffs and soulful solos. Mike Inez provided the iconic bass line that drives the title track. Randy Castillo powered the songs with his drumming, and John Sinclair handled keyboards. Together they gave Ozzy a fresh modern edge, while staying true to his dark theatrical roots. The album's emotional centerpiece was Mama, I'm Coming Home, co-written with Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, who also contributed lyrics to several other songs. Written as a love letter to Sharon, it showed a tender side of the Prince of Darkness and became his first solo single to break into the US Top 40. The title track, No More Tears, stood as another career highlight. Built on Wylde's crushing guitar work and Inez's hypnotic bass line, the song stretched past 7 minutes and became a live staple for decades. Tracks like Road to Nowhere, Desire, and Time After Time blended heaviness with melody. No More Tears was a massive commercial triumph. It was certified quadruple platinum in the United States and sold more than 5 million copies worldwide. The record also earned Ozzy critical recognition, including a Grammy nomination for Best Metal Performance for the track I Don't Want to Change the World. For those who had written him off as a casualty of 1970s and 1980s excess, the album stood as clear proof of Ozzy's enduring power as one of heavy metal's most influential figures. Riding high from the success of No More Tears, Ozzy shocked the rock world in 1992 by announcing that he was retiring from touring. He titled his farewell run the No More Tours Tour, a tongue-in-cheek nod to his latest hit. The decision stemmed from exhaustion after 2 decades of near-constant recording, touring, and personal struggles with addiction. Fans around the world rushed to see him on what was billed as his last tour. The shows were triumphant, with Ozzy delivering powerhouse performances. Yet, despite the emotional goodbyes, the retirement was short-lived. Ozzy admitted that stepping away from the stage was impossible. Music and performing were in his blood, and within just a few years he was back in front of packed arenas, ready for the next chapter. In 1993, Ozzy's so-called touring retirement led to the release of Live and Loud. It was a powerful double live album and video collection that captured the raw intensity of his performances. The album showcased a powerful mix of songs from every stage of his career, blending Black Sabbath classics with his most iconic solo tracks. It was a celebration of Ozzy's musical journey and proof that his connection with the audience was as strong as ever. The album also featured the live track, I Don't Want to Change the World, which earned Ozzy his first Grammy Award in 1994 for Best Metal Performance with Vocal. For Ozzy, it was a triumphant moment and a well-deserved recognition from the music industry, celebrating his enduring power and undeniable legacy. In 1995, the Prince of Darkness made a powerful return with Osmosis, a dark, heavy, and atmospheric album. Recorded between 1994 and 1995, the album was produced by Michael Beinhorn, while engineering was handled by Paul Northfield and mixing by David Bianco. The lineup featured Ozzy on vocals, Zakk Wylde on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, Dean Castronovo on drums, and producer Michael Beinhorn adding keyboards. Legendary Yes keyboardist Rick Wakeman contributed parts on Perry Mason and I Just Want You, adding depth to the album's dark tone. Musically, Osmosis leaned into the brooding and moody textures of mid-1990s metal, balancing heavy guitar riffs with atmospheric production and introspective lyrics. The single Perry Mason became a fan favorite. Other notable tracks like See You on the Other Side and I Just Want You showcased a more emotional and reflective side of Ozzy. Upon its release, Osmosis became a major success, debuting at number 4 on the US Billboard 200, and it reached number 22 in the UK. The record quickly went platinum in the United States and was later certified double platinum. With Osmosis, Ozzy once again proved his ability to adapt and thrive, evolving with the changing sound of heavy music, while staying true to his unmistakable identity. Ozzfest was born out of defiance and vision. Ozzy was rejected by major rock festivals like Lollapalooza and Lilith Fair, which claimed his music didn't fit their audience. His wife and manager, Sharon Osbourne, took matters into her own hands. In 1996, she launched Ozzfest, a groundbreaking festival devoted entirely to heavy metal and hard rock. The first shows, held in Phoenix, Arizona and Devore, California, featured Ozzy, Slayer, Danzig, Biohazard, Sepultura, and Fear Factory, instantly proving there was a massive and loyal audience for aggressive music. Over the years, Ozzfest became a global phenomenon, bringing together heavy metal legends and emerging bands before massive audiences. More than just a tour, Ozzfest became a movement, solidifying Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne's legacy. After more than 2 decades as one of heavy metal's most iconic voices, Ozzy stepped into the 2000s with a surge of renewed energy and creative determination. The new millennium marked a period of reinvention, blending powerful new studio releases, electrifying live performances, and surprising ventures that revealed his evolution as both an artist and a cultural figure. In October 2001, Ozzy returned with Down to Earth, his first studio album since Osmosis. It was recorded in Los Angeles and in Switzerland with producer Tim Palmer. It reunited Ozzy with guitarist Zakk Wylde, bassist Robert Trujillo, and drummer Mike Bordin. The album showcased a darker and more modern edge, while retaining the melodic power that defined Ozzy's earlier work. Songs like Gets Me Through and Dreamer became instant hits. Upon release, Down to Earth debuted at number 19 on the Billboard 200 and climbed to number 4 on the UK albums chart, eventually earning gold certification in the United States. For many fans, it proved that Ozzy still had plenty of fire left in him. During the Down to Earth World Tour, in early 2002, Ozzy and his band performed a powerful set at Tokyo's historic Nippon Budokan Hall. The show was recorded and released later that year as Live at Budokan, both as an album and a concert DVD. Produced by Tom Panunzio, they tore through classics like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Bark at the Moon, and No More Tears, alongside newer material like Gets Me Through. Live at Budokan charted modestly, reaching number 70 on the Billboard 200, but it quickly became a fan favorite and went gold in the US. Ozzy's life took an unexpected turn into mainstream pop culture with the launch of the Osbournes on MTV. The reality show followed Ozzy, Sharon, Jack, and Kelly as they went about their everyday lives. The show became a cultural phenomenon, attracting millions of viewers who had never heard Paranoid or Crazy Train, but suddenly knew Ozzy as the eccentric, foul-mouthed dad with a heart of gold. Running from 2002 to 2005, the Osbournes reshaped the landscape of celebrity reality TV, earned an Emmy Award for Best Reality Program, and turned the family into worldwide icons. Behind the humor and the chaos, however, life wasn't easy. Sharon was diagnosed with colon cancer, and Ozzy continued to battle long-standing addictions and health scares. Their strength and raw honesty only made the audience love them even more. By the time the series ended, Ozzy's image had transcended heavy metal, transforming him into a beloved cultural icon. Ozzy's legendary career was celebrated with Prince of Darkness, a 4-disc box set. Released on March 22, 2005, it offered a comprehensive journey through every chapter of his solo career. The first 2 discs featured Ozzy's solo hits, rare B-sides, and deep cuts. The third disc explored collaborations with legendary artists, including Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, and Tony Iommi. The fourth disc featured a full album of Ozzy covering songs by the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Cream, and other rock legends. It offered listeners a glimpse into the music that inspired him as a young man. The fourth disc proved so strong that it was released in November 2005 as a standalone album titled Undercover. Commercially, Prince of Darkness made a strong impression for a box set release. It debuted at number 36 on the Billboard 200, remaining on the chart for 3 weeks. It was certified gold in the US and in Canada. Black Rain was released on May 22, 2007. It marked Ozzy's powerful return after 6 years without a new studio album. Recorded in Los Angeles, the album featured Zakk Wylde, Blasco, and Mike Bordin, with Kevin Churko serving as producer. Themes like war, addiction, and survival reflected Ozzy's darker worldview. Led by the hit single, I Don't Wanna Stop, which earned a Grammy nomination, Black Rain debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 and was certified gold in the US. Ozzy released Scream in 2010, marking the debut of guitarist Gus G, who stepped in to replace longtime bandmate Zakk Wylde. The album was produced by Kevin Churko at the Bunker Studio in Los Angeles. Led by the single Let Me Hear You Scream, the album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and reached the top 10 in multiple countries. Energetic and defiant, Scream showed that Ozzy still had the power and the passion. In November 2011, after years of speculation, Black Sabbath's founding members came together for the first time since 1978. Their long-awaited return was announced during a press conference at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, a fitting tribute to the venue where their American story first began. However, talks over Bill Ward's contract soon deteriorated. He stated that the terms he was offered failed to recognize him as an equal member of the band. Eventually, he was replaced by drummer Brad Wilk. But just as excitement reached its peak, tragedy struck when Tony Iommi was diagnosed with lymphoma, forcing the group to cut back their tour plans. Refusing to give up, the band turned their strength and focus toward creating new music in the studio. The result was 13, released on June 11, 2013, the first Black Sabbath studio album with Ozzy Osbourne in 35 years. Produced by Rick Rubin, the album set out to revive the dark, ominous sound that had defined their early 70s classics. With Bill Ward absent due to unresolved contract issues, Brad Wilk of Rage Against the Machine filled in on drums. 13 debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, marking the band's first U.S. chart-topping album. Tracks like God Is Dead and End of the Beginning echoed the doomy power and spiritual weight of their past, yet carried a fresh sense of purpose. The reunion reignited Black Sabbath's legacy, serving as both a triumphant comeback and a final chapter for the originators of heavy metal. In 2017, the band returned home to Birmingham for their last performance, a historic farewell that closed the book on one of the most influential eras in music history. In 2019, Ozzy Osbourne faced one of his darkest years. A severe infection forced him to cancel his tour, and a fall at home led to spinal surgery and months of recovery. Quietly, he was also battling the early stages of Parkinson's disease. It was a year of pain and resilience, a true test of the Prince of Darkness's will to survive. The Prince of Darkness made a triumphant return in February 2020 with Ordinary Man. It was Ozzy's first solo album in nearly a decade, and one of the most deeply personal works of his entire career. Produced by Andrew Watt, the album featured Duff McKagan, Chad Smith, and guest appearances from Elton John, Slash, and Post Malone. Tracks like Under the Graveyard, Straight to Hell, and the title song Ordinary Man revealed a powerful balance of vulnerability and defiance as Ozzy confronted aging and mortality with raw honesty. Recorded during a period of serious health struggles, the album became both a reflection on his legacy and a testament to his resilience. Commercially, Ordinary Man was a major success, debuting at number 3 on both the UK charts and the US Billboard 200, with 77,000 units sold in its first week. Patient Number 9 marked a powerful chapter in Ozzy Osbourne's late career resurgence. Released in September 2022 and produced by Andrew Watt, the album brought together an extraordinary lineup including Jeff Beck, Tony Iommi, Eric Clapton, Zakk Wylde, Robert Trujillo, and Chad Smith, resulting in one of the most ambitious and celebrated works of his career. Critics praised Patient Number 9 as Ozzy's strongest album in years. Commercially, it debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, topped several rock and metal charts, and became his first record to reach number 1 in Canada. In 2023, Patient Number 9 earned Ozzy 2 Grammy Awards for Best Rock Album and Best Metal Performance for Degradation Rules. The recognition reaffirmed his status as a living legend who continues to surprise and inspire generations of fans. In February 2023, Ozzy announced the cancellation of all remaining tour dates, a difficult decision that marked the end of his decades-long life on the road. After years of battling health issues and undergoing multiple spinal surgeries, he admitted that his body could no longer endure the physical demands of touring. In an emotional statement, he expressed deep gratitude to his fans for their loyalty and understanding, saying that stepping away from the stage was one of the hardest choices he had ever made. Still, Ozzy made it clear that he wasn't finished with music, leaving the door open for special one-off performances or appearances when his health allows. Ozzy Osbourne was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, first with Black Sabbath in 2006, and later as a solo artist in 2024. Metallica had the honor of inducting Black Sabbath, recognizing the band's role in creating heavy metal and shaping many generations of musicians. Nearly 2 decades later, actor and musician Jack Black inducted Ozzy as a solo artist, celebrating his journey from Blizzard of Ozz to Patient Number 9 and his lasting influence on rock and metal. Together, the 2 honors solidified Ozzy's legacy and immortalized him forever in rock music history. On July 5, 2025, Ozzy took his final bow with Back to the Beginning, a monumental farewell concert that marked the end of one of the greatest journeys in rock music. The historic event took place at Villa Park in Birmingham, the same city where Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill had forged the sound of heavy metal more than 50 years earlier. This wasn't just a show. It was a full-circle moment, a final salute to both Ozzy's legendary solo career and the legacy of Black Sabbath itself. Tickets vanished in just 16 minutes, with 44,000 fans filling the stadium and more than 150,000 others waiting online, hoping for a chance to witness history. For millions unable to be there in person, the event was streamed live as a worldwide pay-per-view broadcast. Back to the Beginning was more than just a goodbye. It was a powerful celebration of a lifetime devoted to the world of rock music. As the final notes faded into the night, fans understood they were witnessing the end of an era and a final farewell from the Prince of Darkness.